Welcome to the YAHOWAH vlog. Today is the 18th of September, 2025. It is a Wednesday. The reason I bring that date to your attention is that Towrah will be celebrated 4 evenings from now. Towrah is the actual name of the Moed Mikre that rabbinical types have so egregiously corrupted and changed to Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is absolutely, unequivocally wrong. In fact, it's as foul as the Babylonian Talmud. It is the Babylonian New Year. And the very fact that they have hoodwinked millions of Jews into celebrating Rosh Hashanah as the beginning of the high holy days has earned Yahweh's disgust. It further demonstration that rabbinic Judaism is nothing but a self-serving fraud, and that God's people should be angry with them. You have no chance, Israel, individually or collectively, to survive so long as you continue to trust those who have abused you for 2,000 years. So we are approaching Towrah. This Towrah will mark exactly 8 years until the conclusion of the time of Israel's troubles. And so that's an important date. The next Towrah, we will be into the time of Jacob's troubles. It begins on the Shabat of the 22nd of May, 2026, with just 8 months from now. It seems like we're already in it, of course, with the world erupting in anti-Semitism. I would guess that's well over half of the posts that I see now on X, and almost as many on Facebook, are virulently anti-Semitic. Joe Rogan joined the chorus today, claiming that Jews are deliberately targeting and killing women and children in Gaza. And he showed his disgust of Israel and Jews for what is blatantly untrue. And you have, Joe Rogan and Candace Owens and Carlson Tucker. And of course, before his death, that was the direction that Charlie Kirk was going. And then you have the king of the anti-Semites and Nick Fuentes, which they were all reflecting his views. And you have to ask yourself if the leading influencers are all anti-Semites. And they're all playing to a MAGA audience. What does it say about MAGA? Christians, and they're all claim to be Christians. What does it say about Christians? What does it say about MAGA? What does it say about Donald Trump? When you recognize that the audience for each of these influencers, the most popular in social media, is obviously encouraging them to call out Israel for condemnation. I had a disagreement today with somebody that I normally get along with beautifully on X, which is rare because there really is no audience for the message I'm delivering on X. I speak for YAHOWAH, and there really isn't anybody other than covenant members who want to hear from YAHOWAH. YAHOWAH is less popular now than really at any time. Anyone who is religious is anti-YAHOWAH. Anyone who is overtly political is anti-YAHOWAH. Anyone who is conspiratorial is anti-YAHOWAH. Anybody who is an anti-Semite is anti-YAHOWAH. Anyone who's into beliefs as opposed to knowing would be anti-YAHOWAH. And, this person was talking about how that this ongoing calamity that Israel is pursuing in Gaza was necessary because, you can't allow murderers to walk through the Holy Land, and it was essentially ordained to be this way. And I just shake my head that there are Jews who, almost all Jews seem to be this oblivious. They're either anti-Israel for conspiratorial reasons, and they're just, well, the most vocal anti-Semites seem to be Jews. Look at Bernie Sanders is a great example of that. Or they're doing things that are causing the world to turn against Israel, which is showing pictures of the demolition of Gaza and calling it a good thing. Now, I don't believe for a moment that Israel is targeting women and children. I know that not to be true. But I do know that Israel has killed upwards of 50,000 people in Gaza because, well, the Muslims lured them into Gaza with the atrocities of 10/7. Israel played right into their hands, and they have destroyed maybe most of the apartments, houses, schools, hospitals in Gaza because, well, they were all being used by the Muslims who planned and who are either planned and participated in 10/7 or were continuing to plan to hunt down and kill Jews. And so you can see why they were motivated to do it. But the fact is that it was never a wise strategy. There is no way to get Hamas to surrender, and there's no way to remove Hamas from Gaza. Hamas is Islamic. Gaza is Islamic. But, there were 4,000 Muslims who participated in 10/7, which means that 93% of those that have subsequently been killed in Gaza were not participants. Sure, they applauded it. Sure, they supported it. But at some point, the continued destruction of Gaza and the continued death toll, well, it turned the entire world against Israel. And then when Netanyahu, knowing that he failed in Gaza, that his war goal of eliminating Hamas, removing Hamas from Gaza had not been achieved and could never be achieved, simply doubled down because, well, leaders like that can't admit that their strategy was wrong and that they lost. And so he doubled down. He sent the IDF back into Gaza, this time into Gaza City. And every day there's a score of buildings that get destroyed and more people that are being killed, including Jews. And every day the world becomes more galvanized against Israel. Now, it's got to stop. And even if it stops now, I'm convinced it's already too late. But Israel, I love you, but you're just not listening to reason. I was talking with Rich earlier today, and I said, it would be so beneficial if just a score of Israelis, 7.5 million Jewish Israelis, if we had 70 of them, how about 72? Let's have a round number based upon this 7.2 million of them. 72 would listen to Yahweh's message, would accept Yahweh as God, would denounce the rabbis and Judaism, would renounce Israeli politics, would accept the terms of the covenant, would attend the Moed Mikre as they were prescribed and benefit from them, would recognize that Jesus never existed and that Christianity is an anti-Semitic religion, and that though David is the Messiah, the Son of God, the former and returning king, and that he is our Savior by having fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim in 33 CE. It's obvious, God said so. And so that's not asking for a lot. Just 72 of you. Please. Listen. Respond. 72 of you that will acknowledge that your primary enemy today, Islam, was created by rabbis, and they should be disrespected for it. There was rabbis that sold Babylonian Talmud stories to Muhammad that he used to create the Quran. Without them, there is no Quran. Without the Quran, there is no genocide being perpetrated by Muslims. 200 million people that have been killed by Muslims would be alive, or at least they wouldn't have been killed, raped, plundered, or enslaved by Muslims. 1948 would not have occurred. 67, 1973 would not have occurred. 10/7 would not have happened. It's time to hold the rabbis accountable. Do you know that without rabbis, there would have been no diaspora? There'd been no renaming the land as Palestine. Of course, then there would have been no Holocaust, would there? This was all Rabbi Akiba's, the founder of Rabbinic Judaism. It was his mistake, naming a false Messiah. Without that, there's no Judaism. You know, without rabbis, there is no Christianity, the religion that for 18 centuries plagued God's people. They're the ones that trained Paul to act like a rabbi and create arguments where you twist the word of God into saying that which it doesn't. And he created the myth of Jesus just as Rabbi Akiba created the myth of Bar Kokhba. It's all rabbinic lore. You know, without rabbis, the Holocaust doesn't happen either, because it was when a Muslim partnered with the Nazi Hitler that the solution in Germany and Europe changed from exiling the Jews to exterminating them. So you'd think you'd get 70 Israelis to listen, to recognize how wonderful Yahowah is, to read the books that are presented freely at YAHOWAH.com, to act upon them, to fall in love with Yahowah again, to recognize the achievements of Dowd, that Dowd is, his return is imminent. It's going to happen 8 years from now. To know that Israel is entering the time of trouble, and that begins in less than 8 months, and that 2 out of every 3 Jews are going to die, and that if they are effective as vocal messengers for Yahowah, for Dowd, for the covenant, for the Moed Mikre, that they could greatly increase the number of Jews who survive and enter an eternity as part of God's family. Doesn't seem like too much to ask, does it? Would make a tremendous difference if it were true. Because at this point, there isn't a single significant pro-Israel account in social media that is accepting of Yahowah's name, of the Bereth covenant, of the Moed Mikre invitations to be called out and meet with God, of Dowd being the Messiah, the Son of God, and our Savior. They'd rather partner with Christianity than acknowledge that Christianity is incredibly anti-Semitic, that the New Testament demonizes Jews, but they'd rather pretend that something else is different, not that way. They'd rather continue to bludgeon Gaza than they would to realize that there were 5 things that Israel could have done that would have led to an entirely different result had Jews listened 2 years ago. That's my hope. I will keep on whether or not there are those 20. There are certainly Jews outside of Israel that are committed and making a difference and involved. But it would be a godsend, literally, if one would become 7 and 770 and change the narrative inside of Israel. We were in our last program on Qatsyr harvest, and this program is devoted to the next 2 harvests, Shabuah and Towrah. On Towrah, the highlight is the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. The Adamah Parah is presented in Numbers 19 and resolves the consequence of the guilt of Israel in Numbers 5. my guess is that most people have led to believe that Numbers 5 is about an adulterous woman, and therefore it's about a woman. And it's about a woman who has somehow committed sexual adultery. Not true. There's people also that believe that the story in Numbers 19 is about a red heifer. It's not true either. The story in Numbers 19 that resolves the problem in Numbers 5 is about a bloody red man of the earth who is a productive bull, Adam of Perah. And the story in Numbers 5 is about Israel, who has been a religious whore. And as a result of being a religious whore, Israel, you're incapable of returning to God until your religiosity is resolved. I was cleaning up some edits on the book that I've just published. It's published now at YAHOWAH.com. It's a really profoundly important read. You'll find it at YAHOWAH.com in the Yada Yahowah series, which I believe is the second series. If you go up on the top of the page and you click on books, the second series will be the Yada Yahowah series. It begins with Bereshith, the beginning. And you're going to have to, on your page there, you're going to have to Control F5. Rich will refresh that page and get a correct look for you. But it's going to recall correct Control F5 to do that. He is showing on a screen that page. And if you've been there before, you do need to hit Control F5, which will refresh the page. And you'll find that the ninth book, there it is called Time of Trouble in that series. And what one of my editors found out is that it seemed odd that God was going to overlook the religious malfeasance of women and focus on the men. And yet that is exactly what God says. And you have to read this and say, I'm not going to count the religious whoredom of the women against them, of Israel. So this story in Numbers 5 can't be about the adulterous woman, can it? God says, I'm not going to count the religious whoredom. And that is what adultery is. It's religious prostitution against God. God despises religion, particularly Judaism. And the reason that he says it is something that I had not considered until I had to go back and I checked the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there's a significant difference between what the Dead Sea Scrolls say and the text of, I believe it's in Hosea. And what I found is that God says he is not going to hold the religiosity of Israel's women against them because he can't, recognizing that Israeli men are the biggest prostitutes on the planet. He says, your men are so repulsive. They're prostitutes. They're religious whores. And they are so disgusting. He says, I just really can't blame you. If I were, associated with them, I'd leave them too. In fact, I am. That's why Yahweh wrote a letter of divorce to Israel. Said, I can't stand you anymore. Your religiosity is disgusting. It's why he had Hosea marry Gomer, a religious prostitute, so that Hosea, as his witness, his prophet, would have empathy for what Yahweh had endured already for nearly, from, I guess, it'd be 700 years. And now what Yahweh has endured for 3,400 years. But he says that the men of Israel are so disgustingly religious that by comparison, he says, I'm going to overlook the religiosity of the women. And so this story in Bamidbar in the wilderness, Numbers 5, really isn't about resolving the religiosity of a female. It's about the religiosity of the men of Israel and their propensity to promote Judaism, which God finds repulsive. And you wonder, so why is the person described as an Isha versus an Ish? The reason is that Yahweh views the men of Israel now as women. He says it in a number of places, that he says that they lack the substance of men. They lack character. They lack conviction. They lack strength. They are not willing to stand up against the crowd, stand up against the culture, the politics, the religion. And he says, so I see Israel as being comprised of women. You know, look at Israel. Netanyahu was destroying the country. And yet no one other than the Marxists who just hate him because he's more moderate than they are, more conservative than they are, nobody else is willing to say that the emperor is naked. And he is. And he has. And so the story of what's called the adulterous woman is really the story of Israel's ongoing religiosity. And when you read Numbers 15, in the midst of all of this, kind of almost in the middle of it, isn't it? And Yahweh is explaining how he's going to resolve the propensity of his people to go astray with a ram, a bull, and a goat. The ram is David. He fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. He's going to return as king on Kippurim. Yada is the bull. He's the one offering the sacrifice on Towrah to resolve the guilt of Israel. And the goat is Eliyahu, who will be the master of ceremonies at that time, one of the final two witnesses. And he is the goat also that provides the blood to sprinkle on the mercy seat, the Kipporeth, to resolve this rebellion on Kippurim. And David will be the one goat who will do the anointing of that mercy seat. And so when that discussion is reaching its conclusion, God says that the parah, this bull, par, he has bakar too. He has so many different words for this particular representation of a man. It's a man, Yada, as the bull. He's quite clear in saying that he can resolve crimes of omission, but not commission. And that is to say that if you survive the time of Jacob's troubles and you make it to the 24th of September of 2033, yes, indeed, the Maimonides rabbinical calendar is off by 197 years. Year 2033 is year 6,000, Yah. That if you make it to September 24th, the Shabat, which is the celebration of Towrah, not Rosh Hashanah, and you are still in the crimes of commission category, where it means you are not just political, you're promoting your politics. You're not just religious, but you're promoting and defending the rabbis and the Haredim or any other form of Judaism or Messianic Judaism or Christianity or Islam or any other ism. Or you're one of the outspoken Marxists on the left in Israel. If you're promoting your politics, you're promoting your religion, you're promoting a conspiracy of some sort, he's saying that the sacrifice of the Adam Parah cannot help you. It's only crimes of omission. The difference is being misled, which is foolish, by the rabbis or by a politician, or misleading as a rabbi, as a politician, or as a proponent for religion or politics. They cannot be helped. It is only those who have been deceived, not deceivers. So that is the attendees here. God is on record saying in Zechariah that he's going to send out 2 chariots, for Jews. One is black, and it's going to pick up the men in black and haul them off to their death. The other is white, and it's going to pick up those who can be salvaged because they have been misled, but they are not misleading. They have committed crimes of omission, not commission. And they're going to bring them to Yisrael to benefit from the sacrifice of the Yahowah Parah, this bloody red man of the earth who is a productive bull. He is the man from Edom. He is also the Choder. He is the Nakar. He's Yada. You're listening to him. And that sacrifice, as he allows his corporeal body to be bludgeoned, is going to resolve the guilt, the inadvertent guilt of Yisrael, so that she, not he, is prepared to be betrothed to Dod. It's symbolic, of course. And the symbolism is that Dod, the Messiah and King, is returning, and he wants his people back. And he can't take his people back and can't even bring Yahowah back with him unless they're got their act clean. So this is 10 days before his return, and that is the purpose of what is happening. The priest in this story happens to be Eliah. And keep in mind, God's exceedingly good at telling stories. Eliah was famous for one event, and then God took him. Because it's that one event that was the dress rehearsal for the greatest show that will ever transpire in human history, the greatest event ever. You see, Eliah, whom people call Elijah, was overtly anti-political and anti-religious. He is famous for not only attacking, mocking, but destroying the religious and political establishment of Israel. And he's going to have that same job again. God hates religion and politics. That is why we're having this discussion. But he did so as the master of ceremonies over an event where the sacrifice was a bull. And the story of that sacrifice, with copious amounts of water and fire ignited by Yahowah, all to purge the religiosity and politics of his people, is exactly what is going to transpire again in 8 years. And it will be exactly 2,888 years since Eliah served in this capacity. How's that for a story? Are you ready for that? All right, so here's the story. Now I'll start at Numbers 5:25. So the one acting in the role of priest, Eliah, will obtain and accept from the woman's hand, and this is representative of this remnant, the mortal remnant of Israel, that which is apportioned as a sacrificial gift. And again, it is designating as a woman because we're told at the divorce in Hosea that God is not going to hold the guilt of the woman against her, while he is holding the guilt of the men because they are religious whores. So this fits into that narrative. From the woman's hand, that which is apportioned as the sacrificial gift. There are two sacrificial gifts that matter. They would not be in this position if they had accepted the first, which is the son who was given, David, because he fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. Had they capitalized upon this gift, they would have been part of either the Towrah harvest or, previous to that, 7 years earlier, the Shabat harvest. So they will be here without that gift, which now means they only have one last gift that is being given. And that is the gift of the Yahowah Parah. And it is the ashes of the Yahowah Parah, the water that is mixed with it, the fire that will kindle all of that, that purges her of her inadvertent guilt. And it was a sacrifice freely offered. It was a mincha. For exclusivity in the relationship, Kina, this gift that the Adam of Parah is offering restores exclusivity in the relationship, not in a marriage relationship, unless you want to view the covenant as a marriage, which isn't the furthest thing from the truth by any means. But Yahweh does not like being cheated on with religion or false gods. Hashem, Adonai, G-D, they're not Yahweh. God does not like that. And it was Jews that gave rise to the lie of Jesus Christ. It was Jews that gave rise to the lie of Allah. God's not happy about that either. So he wants exclusivity in the relationship. He's zealous and he's jealous. If you're going to be among those who are allowed into the millennial Shabat as this mortal remnant of Israel, then you're going to have an exclusive relationship with Yahweh, period, end of conversation. You are never going to mention a Hashem, a G-D, or a Lord, Adonai, again. There will be absolutely no mention of a Jesus or a Christ or of an Allah. You got it? Now, you can make this decision now and do yourself a wonderful benefit, but at this moment, that is the baseline requirement. So it's for exclusivity in the relationship. Then he will waive the voluntary sacrificial offering that is appointed as a gift. Waive it, lift it up to God. We have a wave offering that is part of Shabuah, and it is symbolic in Towrah, and that there is so much similarity between these 2 days, Shabuah and Towrah. And so God wants you to lift up this offering and say, take this and use it as you intend to purge me of my religious guilt. Then he will waive the voluntary sacrificial offering. Now, it's actually the priest now that is waiving this, and he knows what to waive. Offering that is apportioned as a gift before the appearance and to be near the presence of Yahweh. That is the purpose. Yahweh is returning in 10 days. And either you are cleansed and prepared to meet with him or not. The last time that Israel, any number of Israelites, mortal Israelites, met with Yahweh? When was the last time? 3,480 years prior to this day. It was at the base of Mount Horeb. Yahweh had given Israel 3 days to clean themselves up and get their act together so that they were presentable, comfortable. They knew that Yahweh would be coming off the summit of the mountain, at least this representation of Yahweh in the fire and light. Radiant energy would come off the summit of the mountain where he had been with Moshe, delivering Barashith and teaching Moshe what he would need to know to be an effective witness and prophet. And that the purpose was that Yahweh wanted to affirm what he always does. If Yahweh has chosen someone that he is going to speak through, he lets everybody know. And so he came down to let everybody know that he had chosen Moshe and that he was the one he was speaking through. Now, it's interesting. God did the same thing, did he not, with Dod? Where he picked him out, exclaimed to the world, "This is my chosen one," had him anointed, made all manner of declarations, had his spirit come upon him. And then he and Dod collaborated on 100 Mashal and Mizmor, Psalms and Proverbs. And then they fought 66 battles together and won every one of them. God made it very clear. And you look at the 89th Mizmor, God says, Dod is my son, I am his father. He is my Messiah. He is the Zeroah, the sacrificial lamb. He is the chosen one. He is the exemplar. He is the one who is most set apart. He is the returning king, and he is your savior. And he is returning as brilliant as the sun. God makes it absolutely clear that Dod is the one. He did the same thing in the mission that I'm fulfilling now, with upwards of 1,000 prophecies. regarding this role. God always lets you know who he has chosen to speak through. And so he said that he would waive the voluntary sacrificial offering, apportioned as a gift before the appearance and to be near the presence of Yahweh. And this is the same thing. Eliah was chosen for this role. He is going to accomplish it such that when this occurs, the remnant of Israel will be prepared. As I was telling that story about Yahweh and Moshe, when he came down Mount Horeb to say, yeah, this is my guy, that what he also did is he spoke to Israel. They were able to see the brilliance of his light and hear the tenor of his voice as he acknowledged that he had chosen Moshe. And by the way, in Devarim, Yahweh reveals that Dod would be the appointed one. That entire 18th chapter of Bamidbar, of Devarim, I should say, of words, Deuteronomy, is based on an acknowledgement that Dod is the one. And so when he said all of those things, the children of Israel said, we'd rather die than see you or hear from you again. And so from that point on, Yahweh acknowledged that he would only communicate to his people through people like Eliah, through Dod, through Yada. And that at this point, since he was going to return, this now having been 3,470 years since you told God to go away, to shut up, you never wanted to see him or hear from him again. That's how long it's been. 3 millennia and almost 500 years. And so to get prettied up this time, you got 10 days. and God is orchestrating the purging. He's going to ignite the flames that sear away the religious guilt. He's going to release the waters that will come up underneath the sacrifice of the Adam of Torah that will cleanse the mortal remnant of Israel with the ash of the Adam of Torah. That is what is happening at this very moment. And for those who now are prepared for the appearance and to be near Yahweh when he arrives with Dod in 10 days, and approach it with her to the place of the sacrifice. What is the place of the sacrifice? Temple Mount. Sacrifice of the Adam of Torah is going to take place due west, the Mount of Olives side of the tent of the restoring witness, which will be placed back on the Temple Mount after the Dome of the Rock and the mosque, Alaska Mosque, are removed. It will be placed there. There will be an altar in its normal place and be visible beautifully from the Mount of Olives. And that is the place where the sacrifice will be offered. So now you know where, you know when, you know why, you know how, you even know who. So throughout this prophetic portrayal of the restoration of Israel, the mortal remnant, prior to the arrival of the Messiah, seeking exclusivity in the relationship so that he can be betrothed to the wayward nature of his people that have gone astray by being overtly religious over the millennia, the man acting as priest is, as I have identified him, he is Elijah. Eliah means Yahweh is God. It's a good thing to keep in mind. I don't know how in the world that rabbis set a place for Eliah at Passover, not recognizing that he is vehemently anti-religious and despises Judaism. Or that they will call him Elijah, knowing that the letter J and the J sound didn't even exist until the 17th century. And that his name is Eliah, because Yahweh's name is Yahweh, and he happens to be God. Eliah means God is Yah. Yah is God. Now, having played this role in the burning of the Adam of Torah, he will know just what to do with this mixture of blood, ashes, and water. And that is why it has become the final wave offering to Yahowah, now different in composition from the one presented on Bikurim. But once again, it is the gift which brings life. And here, Yisrael, on Eliah's instructions, is being brought right to the place of the sacrifice, which is the porch area leading to the first temple, which now will be the tent of the restoring witness. It was brought into Jerusalem. It's something that is near and dear to God. He has clearly saved it. He's going to restore it and resurrect it on the Temple Mount for this occasion. I even think that the altar that Solomon built, that God is going to have either the original or replica of that as well. So when we considered the letters comprising Parah, we noted that the hay was scribed to depict a man with both hands raised up to God. And we noted that the Parah heifer was feminine, but it's a feminine manifestation of Par, bull, who had lived his life trampling down demons and serpents and all manner of devilish men and demonic spirits. He is at least at this place in time the Zakaron, the most memorable man, transformed into the Azkara. So let's continue this story of Numbers 5. The one acting in the role of priest, Eliah, should grasp a handful from that which is apportioned as the sacrificial gift of the burnt offering. God is igniting the fire. Hasatan, the corporeal manifestation of Hasatan, will be the one that will bludgeon my body, just as the beast of Rome bludgeoned Doe's body for Pesach. It sounds gruesome, and I'm sure it will be, but the fact of the matter is that a body is something both Doe and I will be glad to be rid of. And the fact that it's something that God's going to do marvelous with it, oh, so much the better. So the one acting in the role of priest, Eliah, should grab a handful of that which is apportioned as the sacrificial gift. This is the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, of the burnt offering, of the Azkara, which means to remember her sacrifice, being the one who was burned as a male presented with feminine attributes from Azal to go way and Zakar to be a memorable man, and send the sacrifice up in smoke at the place of the sacrifice. Thereafter, in the end, he should have the woman drink the water. Water and ash, smoke and fire. The burnt offering is the Adamah Parah. It is an Adamah Parah because Yahweh views this bull as productive, and he often uses feminine titles to describe things that he wants done this way. And it is the Bashar body of the Nefesh. Nefesh is feminine soul of Yada. And so this is the reason he is doing this. It's also being done on Towrah, which is feminine, as is Shabuah. It's also feminine. And so this is the day of the Towrah Parah, which is why Azkara is also feminine. It doesn't mean that the sacrifice is a woman, because he's clearly a man. But God uses these kind of references. For example, the Choder, which is masculine in Hebrew, receives the seven spirits of Yahweh, but Ruach is a feminine noun. So all of the attributes are presented in the feminine. It's just a nature of the speech. And when we read too much into it and we turn the Adamah Parah into a red heifer, then we've missed the point entirely. So this burnt offering and will go up in smoke. Yahweh's lighting the fires. The smoke's going to billow up into the heavens. He's releasing the waters from underneath the Temple Mount that's going to purge the guilt of this remnant of Yisrael. And the waters will be purifying. So he says, have her drink some of the waters. We're trying to purge the religiosity, particularly inadvertent religiosity, so that the mortal remnant of Israel is prepared for Yahweh's arrival with Dod and the ultimate family reunion with the betrothal. So Eliah is going to grasp a handful of the remains of the free will offering, being apportioned to reconcile this remnant of Yisrael. And in his acclaimed hands, we will find Qatsyr, the burnt offering, of the feminine manifestation of a memorable man. Zakar, which is what it's from. Zakar means memorable man. So this is a feminine manifestation of the most memorable of men. This is Yada, and the sacrifice that Yada is making as the Adamah Parah, this productive man of the earth. And just as the remains of his sacrifice rise up to the heavens, his nefesh, soul, being feminine, will have preceded it. This is Yahweh's final recipe for what ails his embittered children in the end. So when he has had her drink the water, God says, as it was to be on the condition she has caused herself to be sullied and had acted unfaithfully in an unreliable and untrustworthy manner against her man, and had entered into her waters pursuant to the consequence of the curse of toxic bitterness, Lamar. Then she has swelling of the womb from her procreative power to give birth. The woman will only be for a finite time among those cursed by Allah in the midst of her people. The sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, as God made it very clear in Numbers 15, can purge inadvertent guilt. That means somebody who has been misled. But if the person who is there to benefit from it, and what's going to happen is there's going to be this remnant of Yisrael that's going to gather around the Temple Mount on Towrah, which is the last day of the time of troubles, when Yahweh is incinerating all religious pursuers. So he's going to incinerate everyone who is religious, political, and militant in and around Jerusalem and then the entire world. And he's transforming the area around Jerusalem and then all of Israel and then the entire world so that it reflects the conditions of Eden. There'll be no more religion, there'll be no more politics, there'll be no more conspiracy, there'll be no more militancy. This is a pretty extraordinary moment. And you're also having, this is the last day that Hasatan, the adversary, and his corporeal manifestation, who happens to be Donald Trump, will be able to affect human decisions. That's pretty extraordinary by itself. They will be cast into Sheol at this moment. And then you're going to see God light this fire around the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, while the greatest orator in human history, Eliah, explains what all of this represents, and that evening prior between the gleaning of Towrah and the fulfillment of the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, God will have sent these actually 4 chariots, 3 of which leave Jerusalem and go throughout the world to discard the Jews who are too religious and political to even be in this mix, collect those who have the potential to be resolved by the Adamah Parah, and to also bring Goyim, whose attitudes and aptitudes are such that they are not anti-Semitic, they're not overtly religious or political, so they can be the workers of the millennial Shabat. That is the crowd that is here. And what we're finding is in the test of the Adamah Parah, what we're finding is that just as it is presented in Numbers 15, he isn't going to solve the problem for everybody. Now, he's unlike Dode. Dode's sacrifice on Pesach and Matzah, no matter how religious or political you may have been in your life, how wrong you have been, once you disavow religion and politics and militarism and patriotism and accept the terms and conditions of the covenant and attend the Moed Mikre as they were described by Yahweh and embrace his name and begin this process of not only learning about him, but engaging in support of his family business, then you are viewed as perfect, you're viewed as eternal, and all of these wonderfully beneficial things, and it will resolve all prior religiosity, no matter how religious you may have been, no matter how political you may have been. Matzah carries it all away. But the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah is not that powerful. And it can't be. Because to accept Pesach, Matzah, and Makurim, you have to know who Dode is, when he came, what he did, why he did it, how Pesach delivers life, how Matzah delivers our guilt so that we appear perfect in God's eyes, how Makurim introduces us into the covenant family, and how we receive a tenfold benefit of empowerment and enrichment on this day, and how those three Moed Mikre fit into the remaining 7. And everyone that benefits from the Shabuah harvest or the Teruah gleaning will have capitalized upon these things because they will understand them and they will embrace them, they will accept them, they will act upon them. That is not true with this mortal remnant who are now in Jerusalem, either brought there on the white or the dappled chariot, or who have come to Jerusalem from other places in Israel and are here for this greatest show on earth. They will not have made that decision. Otherwise, the night before, they would have been brought home. And so what this is doing, in essence, is saying that those 2 chariots that just try to find those who might potentially benefit from the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, that this Ruach that is making that decision, canvassing the earth on behalf of Yehudim and Goyim, does not have to determine this person will make it into the millennial Shabbat, that person will not, that person is religious, off to the black chariot, this person is just going to be incinerated as the earth is transformed. The Ruach is not responsible for that decision. All they have to do is pick out the people who have potential to benefit. Got it? Fairly significant, which in other words, Yahweh is not dispatching his Ruach to be the determining factor here. Nope. He's going to do it the way he always does it. You still get your choice. Yep. So that means that everybody that's brought in here to Jerusalem will have could potentially benefit from the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. But whether or not they do is going to depend upon omission versus commission, misled versus misleading. If this person is still viewed as unfaithful, unreliable, untrustworthy, if she is sullied to the extent that the sacrifice, this water mixed with ash and some of the blood even of the Adamah Parah, singed with fire, if she is still sullied, unfaithful, unreliable, untrustworthy, God's not going to want her or him into the millennial Shabbat. And so it's going to cause a swelling of the womb, and the woman will only exist for a very finite period of time, a matter of days, perhaps, at the very, very furthest extent. Absolutely no more than 9 days from this moment. And that means that I don't have to make the call as the one making the sacrifice, and I'm relieved of that. Elia doesn't have to make the call, and I'm sure he is relieved of that. The Ruach doing the gathering of these people and the two different chariots don't have to make the call either. They're just culling the flock to some extent. It will be again whether that person is still sullied to the point that they're unfaithful, unreliable, untrustworthy. And if they are, the cure for those who are salvageable, who can be trustworthy and reliable going forward, will kill those who are not. So God has provided this brilliant test. He's going to have that blood, ash, and water mixture around this great fire that takes place on Mount Moriah as he's terraforming the earth. If you drink it and your belly blows up, then you're not making it in. You're going to die. And if you take it and that does not occur, then you're deemed as reliable going forward. And by the way, the curse of Allah will have already killed 2 out of every 3 Jews. This last wave of the Alaska flood 2.0 is probably going to be in the range of 4 million jihadists. And it's going to involve almost every Islamic country. So militarily and an influx of jihadists, as was the case of Alaska 1.0. It's 1,000 times worse. And Israel is going, at this point, to have been so cursed that this will be the final casualties of all of that. So that was a fairly complicated sentence with a host of dependent clauses seeking an acceptable conclusion, was it not? But in the end, what we learned is that even though Yisrael has wallowed in these toxic waters for a millennia, this is the waters of Meribah is what God is talking about. One of the worst episodes during the Exodus, maybe the worst. That's hard to say, though, because, boy, there were a lot of worst episodes during the Exodus, were there not? Well, God has a cure, but the cure is not going to work for everybody. It all depends on how his cure works within your system, if you happen to be among this remnant, as to whether or not you die or live. So not only will the mortal remnant no longer be spiritually barren if the waters purge her of her guilt, she will be prepared to pass through this time of Allah's curse and will be living at Yahweh's side within 10 days. Now, the purpose of the adulterous woman, that story as it's told and called that, it's actually the disgusting religiosity of Israel, but only dealing with those who were misled as opposed to the misleaders. There will be no rabbis in this group, for example. The purpose of the story isn't to test her because she has been openly whoring around with false gods. If you're looking at Israel, Israel has been for a very long time. It is to cure her, specifically to give her a spiritual bath so that Yahweh and Dod aren't subjected to her stench. Just like the story of the Adam of Parah, it leads to a restoration and a pardon. But let's be clear. Those who were found to be overtly religious during the sacrifice that Elia oversaw were all killed, were they not? Those who turned to the golden calf, which is a bull, early on in the Exodus, they were all killed. The earth swallowed them, did it not? So you have to appreciate that God has designed a mechanism where the final determinant is the person's own reliability and trustworthiness, whether or not they can be reliable and trustworthy going forward. Because they'll be imparted with the Torah of Yahowah. They will be given sound teaching from this point. They'll be given the opportunity to become part of the covenant, but they aren't now, and God doesn't want to even start the millennial Shabbat with anyone who is unreliable. He's had 3 millennia of that. And if this bride is no longer sullied, defiled, or polluted, then she is cleansed and she is restored. She will be pardoned and seen as innocent and be free, and she will conceive, she will sow, she will cultivate and harvest seeds, producing offspring. Bamidbar in the wilderness, Numbers 5:28. The mix of water and ash and blood, this smoky residue, the purging fire, among those who are not overtly religious, will be consumed. And those who remain unreliable, sullied by religion, continuing, even though they're misled, to wanting to be religious, as opposed to using this moment as this opportunity to say, no more. I realize that religion was wrong, that Judaism was wrong, that politics was wrong, and that it's time now to listen to Elia speak on behalf of Yahowah. And those who have reached the point that they have the potential to be reliable and reasonable going forward, who are show signs that they're willing to listen and that they're willing to embrace Yahowah and accept the truth about his Messiah and returning King, then you're cleansed. You're restored. You're pardoned. You're seen as innocent. And you're able to be productive again, which means that during the millennial Shabbat, there will be children born. Isn't it marvelous? So whatever size God wants of his family, he can throttle it based upon this remnant being of appropriate quality, and then of their reproductivity after that. Doesn't require a lot. I mean, we began in the garden with 2, did we not? Now, I'm quite assuming that this will be a fairly significant number who benefit and who make their way into the millennial Shabbat and who are productive again, who are cleansed, who are restored. But that is the story of the Adam of Parah. It is the story here of this woman. The sullied woman is cleansed. What she was, she no longer is. It's all been restored. God is doing exactly what he said he would do. So Yahowah milks this metaphor really for all it's worth. As we learned from Yeshayah, the choder is a fruitful stick. And as the one cultivating the harvest, he has the final Zeroah, becomes the Parah, this fruitful and productive one. And so now, once reconciled, a restored remnant of Yisrael is shown honoring the Adam of Parah sacrifice by Zerah, conceiving, sowing, cultivating, and harvesting seeds, which produce offspring, flourish, and grow. So this is Yahowah's Torah teaching on the subject of Yisrael's final reconciliation pursuant to this final remnant. This is the Torah guidance and teaching of jealousy for exclusivity in the relationship. When the woman goes astray and turns away under or in place of her man, and she trashes herself, making herself filthy and polluted. And for the man, when she, for the benefit of the relationship, he crosses over and he has passed over him, a jealous spirit seeking spiritual exclusivity also in the relationship. And he becomes passionately jealous, desiring the undivided attention of his wife. Then he should present the woman standing before the appearance and to approach the presence of Yahowah. And the one acting in the role of priest should engage at that time and act, carrying out for her everything in accordance with the Torah, the directions and guidance on this. Bamidbar in the wilderness, 5:30. So what we have just read is God's Torah teaching. It's not a law. It's not part of Judaism. This is God's Torah teaching on the subject of the final remnant of Yisrael being purged. Why? Because Dod is returning, and as king, he wants his people back. He wants exclusivity in the relationship. He does not want rebellion anymore. He doesn't want divided interest between Shaul, King Saul, and himself. He doesn't want divided interest between himself as king and the rival, his son Absalom. He doesn't want to have to go and fight the Philistines anymore. He wants to enjoy Israel and to serve as Israel's king throughout the next millennia in conditions equivalent to the Garden of Eden. So this is the Torah guidance and teaching, because the king and his father are jealous for exclusivity in the relationship. The covenant was broken, the family was fractured. But this is the day of reconciliations, Yom Kippurim, in 2033, year 6000 Yah, when the relationship is restored, when the family is mended, when the covenant is now focused entirely on its love for Yahweh and for his son. And so this woman who has gone astray, representing Yisrael, and who has turned away under or in place of her man, and she trashes herself, making herself filthy and polluted. There is now a man who, for the benefit of this relationship, well, he has a bar. He's fulfilled Passover. And now he's zealous. He's jealous. He is seeking exclusivity in this relationship spiritually. Ruach, spirit. Kana, passionate, zealous, exclusive. He wants a he wants a spiritual relationship that has no religiosity. He does not want to compete with Judaism. He does not want to compete with any religious doctrine. He wants the relationship to be part of the covenant and to be spiritually exclusive. This is the reconciliation of the mortal remnant of Yisrael. And he, Dod, has become passionately jealous, desiring the undivided attention of his wife. So therefore, this woman is presented standing before the appearance to approach the presence of Yahowah. 10 days, Yahowah will appear. She is standing, present to approach the presence of Yahowah. And the one acting in the role of the priest, Eliah, should engage at this time and act, carrying out for her everything in accordance with the Torah directions and guidance on this. That is why the story that exists in Numbers 5 was written about the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah in Numbers 19, pursuant to resolving the waters of Meribah in Numbers 20, so that the family can be whole again on Kippurim and enter Sukkah. 24 years ago, when Yahowah approached me on Towrah in 2001, I didn't even know his name. But then over the years, his Shem name became precious to me, and I began to share it in Yada Yahowah. My life's ambition was to teach Torah. I could not have imagined then that I would be Torah. And even more amazing for a Craig who did not know that he would become a choder, much less a Zeroah or a Parah, is the realization of how much one can accomplish when we're willing to listen to Yahweh and do as he has asked. When you get down to it, I only brought 3 things to the table. I was willing to listen to Yahweh. I was willing to do as he asks, and I remain willing to see the job through. That was enough. Now, in this case, the man from whom Yisrael has turned away and who now wants his people's undivided attention is Dod. He is the Messiah. He is the Son of God who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakorim, all of which they have denied. Restoring Dod to his rightful place among his embittered people while reintroducing them to Yahweh's name is Yada's prime objective. And in that regard, Yada Yahowah would be the cure, would it not? Can you ingest it? And you ingest Yada Yahowah. If you read, for example, are speaking from this volume, Qatsyr Harvest. If you were to read Yada Yahowah, are you capable of digesting this? And when you digest it, does it make you one with God? Does it cause you to love Yahweh's name? Does it cause you to appreciate Dod's sacrifice? Do you come to understand what God is offering and expects in return through the 5 conditions and 5 benefits of the Bereth covenant? Are you in a place where you will accept God's invitation to meet with him 7 times each year, as outlined through his Moed Mikre, his invitations to be called out for this purpose? Is that your response to it? First of all, are you willing to ingest it? To do as Yahweh says, are you willing to drink it in? That's the first step. Are you willing to ingest it? Are you willing to drink it in? And when you do, what does it do to you? Do you remain religious and rebellious and political and say, nope, I want to trash it. I want to trash him. I want to argue against it. I want to scream. I want to run. I want to be as embittered as were the children of Israel during the Exodus when Moshe gave up and said, God, why don't you kill me? These people are impossible. Is that your response? Because if it is, you're going to die. Or when you ingest it, does it transform your soul? Does it bring you to the place where you come to love Yahweh and appreciate what his son has achieved? Does it cure you? That is really the question that Yahweh is asking, because Yada Yahowah is the cure. I thank you for listening. I wish you a very good night wherever you may be.